Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's UNC football scouting reports. I'm Tommy Ashley. That is Jason Staples. And of course, if you're listening, you know that we're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Rate, review, and subscribe. All the good stuff. Get your 10% off your order when you're a member of the Tar Pit Premium Message Boards, and it is well worth it. One of the reasons it's worth it is these scouting reports that Jason has done for the last few years. We're about in the middle, Jason. We finished up defensive line last week and all of the defense over the last few weeks. Now you're deep into the offense. First of all, we're going to talk about the offensive line because, quite frankly, everybody knows football starts in the trenches. Offensive line, you've run through them. Let's start. We'll go player by player, similar to the way we've done it before, and then at the end we'll have an overall assessment. Diego Pounds, he is one of, I believe, three that you reviewed and did scouts on that did not have really enough snaps to provide a number. But what'd you see from Diego?
Well, first of all, I mean, you can see the frame is there. I mean, he stands out with the bulk and he's over 6'5", and has the length that you'd want to be able to play tackle. So, just in terms of the traits, the things that you look for a guy to be able to play tackle at this level, he's got them in terms of the baseline stuff. He also moves pretty well. So, and I got to see him a little bit in practice. He's a guy that I think has pretty good natural foot quickness and has the athleticism at that size to be the kind of big block of marble that you want to be able to work with to carve out the offensive lineman that you hope to wind up with. So, really, he's my assessment is this is a guy that could be a upper level ACC type offensive tackle in the future, but he's still pretty raw, and that's what you would expect. I mean, the few reps that I've seen from him, and we saw some stuff in the spring, and then we saw a few garbage time reps this last year. He's a guy that just has a ways to go in terms of hand placement. A lot of young guys, you get away in high school, you kind of get away with being a big guy and just kind of taking a guy to the ground, and your hand placement does not have to be real careful. In college, it's about getting your hand to the chest and keeping things inside. And that means you've got to win with your hands. And these young guys, they have a tendency to like to bear hug, and that's a holding penalty in college. In high school, a lot of times you get away with that. He's a holding penalty waiting to happen at present, and just has a little ways to go in terms of that technique. But again, what I look at when I'm looking for young offensive line talent, you start with the frame. Does he have the requisite frame and size to hold up in the trenches? And then the next thing is, do you have the foot quickness to be able to handle what you're going to see across from you? And if you've got the frame, the size, and the foot quickness, now you're starting to, you put a ham bone, or you put a little few beans in there, and you got a stew going. It's one of those things. So he's one of those guys. You look at that and you go, okay, you've got all the building blocks. The next question, though, and this is the thing that you have to have as the third thing. So you've got the size, frame stuff, the foot quickness. The third thing that you need to have that stew going is you've got to have a guy that loves to play and has some nasty to him. And we're still in the stage of learning whether or not Pounds has that. The early returns on that, I think, are pretty good. I think he's pretty competitive, and you can see that. You could see that a little bit in practice. So I think he's a guy that can be quality depth this year, and then should be in line to potentially start, and it should be a starter next year.
Yeah, Diego is pretty carefree, fun-loving guy as well, so he's got a good attitude about it. You're right about the nastiness. That remains to be seen. Moving down the list, Travion Green. Now, this guy is a monster of a human being. Again, not enough snaps to really rate him or review him accurately on his own field performance, but what you see in the offseason in the spring, that gives you some idea of what he can become for North Carolina.
This dude is enormous.
He is
6'7.5". I think they list him at what, 340? And I think that's accurate for him. That might be aspirational to move down a little bit, but he's so big and so long that he can carry that kind of weight without being sloppy. And the other thing is, you can see in just the reps that we've seen, you can see the foot quickness and the ability to slide and mirror. That tells me, okay, not only do you have elite frame, you've got really good feet to go with that. Oh, all right. Well, now you're starting with kind of A level this, maybe B level feet. You put those together, A level size, A plus level size, with maybe B level feet for the position, maybe B plus level feet for the position. You combine those, and you've got a guy that can be really good. You could see also, just in the few reps that I saw, how naturally strong he is. I mean, the punch through the hands was very, very strong. Very, very, good natural bend. I mean, there were times where you could see like he's capable of keeping his pad level down, even though he's really big. But that's one of those things where consistency there's going to be the issue. Anytime you got a guy that's almost 6'8", pad level is always going to be something that he's going to have to work on. And I think, again, you're looking at the feet, to me, are really good for the size. I think long term he's probably more of the feet of a right tackle than a left tackle. But sometimes if you're 6'8", 6'7.5", and you have plus level right tackle feet, the extra length and size makes you good enough to actually handle the left tackle position. So that remains to be seen. I see him more as a right tackle in the future, but I think he's the most talented offensive lineman on the team based on what I've seen. I think he is he's a guy that if he can get healthy, I'll be interested to see whether or not he can actually find his way on the field for some reps this year. I mean, I don't really expect it, because I think they've got some sense of what they want up front. You return 4 starters, and you've got a transfer coming in from who's not expecting to sit, and that's probably your 5. Nevertheless, if you've got a guy like this and he's really pushing and he's really showing that he's ready to go, you find ways to shuffle it and get your best 5 on the field. So I'm curious to see what happens there. I think, again, as with Diego Pounds, I think both of those guys are probably 100 snaps, something like that on the season. If you can get him in some blowouts and get him seasoned up a little bit, that's great. But I think that's basically what you're looking at with him here. Again, a guy that could push for some time, because I think the talent is there for him to push for that time.
Yeah, and Mac always talks about wanting to play more than just the starters, and so Green would be high up on the list of a guy to come in if he's not starting. I'm going to skip around a little bit. We're going to talk about Zach Rice. Zach Rice is a guy that, another one that you don't have enough to really review him on the field as far as performance, in live reps or in game reps. But Jason, Zach Rice is probably one of the more talked about players on the Inside Carolina message boards. 5-star coming out of Virginia. Still got a lot of work to do. What'd you see from him?
Yeah, when you're a top 10 overall prospect coming out of high school, you tend to get talked about, and that's what Rice was. And he's another guy that 6'6", 315, somewhere in there. He looks the part. He's got the frame. You can see the feet that are there, and you could see those feet in high school. There's a reason that this guy was rated so high, and he has, again, all of those physical traits that you look at and you go, okay, he's got a chance. The big issue with him has been he's gonna have to show that he has that nasty in him. He's got to show that he's got to prove that he's not soft. That's the issue. And he got moved inside to right guard pretty quickly after not really taking to the outside. He had excuse me. He had some troubles at tackle, and they decided that for his development, the best thing would be to get him on the field inside. And there's some chances to play there. But then you watch him in the spring game this year and you go, oh man, he's so far away. You just there are too many times where he just got put on skates where you see the rep and the quarterback's throwing, and then you go back and you watch the rep and you go, oh man, quarterback, the reason the quarterback missed that is because this guy's in his lap. And who's in his lap? Well, it's the right guard. There are too many of those where he's just letting the defensive tackle get to his chest. He's playing with high pads, and then he just kind of gets driven right back into the quarterback. Or on run plays, he's just not showing the kind of aggression that you'd like to see in the run or the pass. And just to me seems a little bit too content to be in position, to be between the guy he's blocking and wherever he's supposed to be, and not trying to win with that position. And some of that, again, is he's a puppy, right? I mean, he's a guy that's young. He's learning how to use his body at this level. He's learning how to fight against guys who have comparable size for the first time in his career. And that's a big hurdle to get over. I mean, he didn't play super high division football in high school. And, I wonder how many guys over 300 pounds that could actually move he ever blocked. My guess is you could count that on maybe 2 fingers. Mm-hmm. So, you look at that and then you come into college and all of a sudden you're getting beat up front. You're getting beat initially for the first time ever. And psychologically, that's something to get over. Just in terms of confidence, in terms of want to, when you played football your whole career and you've succeeded because you were bigger and stronger and faster, quicker than everybody you played against up to now, and all of a sudden you're starting to lose day in, day out in practice. How you respond to that is going to have a lot of impact on whether or not you can actually develop into what you should be at this level. And I think that's the question for Rice right now, is he has to start answering that with fire, with a dissatisfaction, an unwillingness to get pushed around. And I think if he starts to display that, you're looking at a guy that, again, first off the bus type. He has the frame and the tools to be there, but he's got to get the rest of it in place. This is a season where he hopefully can get that start to get that worked out. And again, there's opportunities on the interior to find places to play. I think the starting guards have some limitations. And, he's right now a backup right guard. He has more ability than anybody else at guard on the team. But is he going to be able to channel that into anything positive? Right now, I think, the likelihood that he gets a lot of snaps this season is pretty slim. But it really is up to him, because he could decide, the light bulb could go on first week of camp, and all of a sudden he's not getting pushed around and he's starting to get after people in a different way. And all of a sudden you've got another guy in the mix at guard.
Good stuff there. I mean, I 100% agree with you about the mental side of it for these guys coming out of high school and the level of competition and all that stuff. But we're talking with Jason Staples, of course, Inside Carolina's expert football analyst. UNC's scouting report series we got going on, the offensive line. We are here. We've gone through Pounds, Travion Green, and Zach Rice. Now let's talk about a guy, Jason, that doesn't have ideal size, doesn't have the height, the weight. But he has the heart. He's shown that. Willie Lampkin. You mentioned the transfer earlier. Willie is the transfer from Coastal Carolina, and he's looking to play. And Mac Brown said it, and I'll never forget what he said, is Mac said he may not start, and this was way back in January. He may not start, but he's going to make sure whoever is starting got a lot better. Willie Lampkin, Jason.
Yeah, Willie is a guy, if you watch him, if you put his intangibles in a body like Zach Rice, you're looking at a first round pick. It's real simple. He is, though, he's stubby, he's short, he is, below. I think they list him at 290. I think that's pretty generous, to be honest. And he's working uphill to some degree because of the lack of frame. But the feet are excellent. He's got very good feet. and that allows him to really work into position. And the other thing is, he was 47-0 as a wrestler. Won the Florida State championship in 2A at 285 pounds. He's a guy that he plays like a wrestler. And anybody who's ever, messed around, horsed around with a wrestler knows those guys don't play around. Those guys are nasty.
Do not fight somebody that wrestles.
No, those dudes are nasty. And they will, and the thing is, they play dirty. Wrestlers do. They'll find any way to get their advantage. And he's one of those dudes. He is tenacious, and again, the leverage, he's got some leverage advantages because he's already, say low man wins. Well, he starts low. He's already got that advantage. And the other thing with wrestling is so much of wrestling is getting your hands. You see those guys all the time working on getting their hands into an advantageous position for the takedown. He's already got a lot of what you want as in terms of getting his hands into good position, winning to the chest, all of those things. And the other thing is, wrestlers tend to be strong for their size, and he's country strong, as I would say. Solid fundamentally, and I think also is a really, really good puller, which is important for the current running game that they're going to have. They're going to pull the guards a good bit. And you got to have a guy that can get across the formation on some of the kickouts and can work their way up through the hole to the second level as a puller, and he can do all of that. The other thing is that this is a guy that can play center. So, Corey Gaynor played almost every snap at center last year, but he's not a guy who's got a completely clean bill of, injury history in the past. He had some significant injury issues in the past. So if that sort of thing happens, you hope that Gaynor can play almost every snap again this year, at least every first team snap. But if something happened to Gaynor, your security blanket is Willie Lampkin, because he steps in and can play center at least a replacement level. And for those who have wondered what I mean when I talk about a guy playing at replacement level, okay, go pick up another, you lose a guy at a given spot, or you trade out a guy at a given spot, and you just at random take an average ACC level starter and plug him in there. That's your replacement level. This guy's pretty average. Well, Lampkin, I think, gives you at least that at center if Gaynor goes down. So that's a pretty good security blanket. And then, I think he's going to push real hard for that right guard spot. And if, the right guard spot goes to somebody else, let's say Zach Rice suddenly becomes something. Okay, well, then he's going to push for the left guard spot. He's going to force one of those guys he's going to force all three of those guys on the offensive interior to be better, or he's going to take one of their jobs. I don't think it's going to be Gaynor. I think Gaynor is going to be solid at center as long as he's healthy. But those other two guards are going to have to step up their game, because he's played better than them in the past. So again, doesn't have great bulk. You get him against some of the best defensive tackles in the ACC who can play with comparable leverage and carry another 30 pounds on him or 40 pounds on him, and that's going to be an issue. But all in all, there's a good player and a guy that would be in the two deep at most places in the ACC. He wouldn't necessarily, I don't think he'd be a starter at two or three places in the ACC, at least maybe 4 or 5, but is a guy that can play as a starter in the ACC and not hurt you. And I think that's something that they desperately needed to add in the offseason, and they did.
Yeah, and he comes across as a fun-loving guy. He'll be a feature in the Players Lounge for folks that enjoy those interviews. Willie Lampkin Players Lounge coming soon in the next couple of weeks to Inside Carolina. Let's move on down the list. Jonathan Adorno, a local guy who's gotten some time. You reviewed him as well. Jason, what do you see from Adorno and what he can bring to the table this year and beyond?
Well, again, you look up and down the list. For the most part, Carolina's players on the offensive line, they fit a lot of prototypical, numbers on the depth chart or on the roster. 6'4", 305 has, that's good size for a guard. And you watch him his his pitter patter, the feet for a guard, it's pretty good. He does have pretty good foot quickness, and he's one of those guys that doesn't stop his feet on contact. And then I thought that was in the spring game was something that he showed improvement on as well, was getting his hands on somebody, and then you just keep seeing his feet run like they're supposed to. That's a plus. And he stepped in and played starter level snaps against Georgia State and at Duke last year, and handled himself okay. But all said, he's a guy that basically gets pushed off balance a little bit too easily. Sometimes he'll reach a little bit too much, kind of bend at the waist, and you can kind of pull him and get him off balance, some of those things. And he struggled against quicker players in the running game. So, guys that could slant and first step quickness, that sort of thing. He struggled with that when he saw that last year. And I don't know that that's really going to change. And pad level could be a little bit better too. I thought last year he was a little bit below replacement level when he was on the field. So, he would be a below average ACC starter at right guard if he played at the level that he did last year. But again, you look at the frame, you look at the possibility in terms of decent foot quickness. He has the capacity to be average or a little bit better at that spot this year. He just is going to have to step up and improve a little bit compared to what he was last year. And again, with Willie Lampkin on the roster, if he doesn't improve on that, then he's just going to be a backup to Lampkin. I mean, that's real simple.
Indeed it is. Moving on down the line, we're getting into the starter reps. Ed Montelis. He's a guy who, he came into North Carolina. He was not necessarily a package deal, but kind of with William Barnes. He was the lesser rated guy, but Montelis has played a ton at North Carolina. What did you see from him?
Yeah, you look at this. I mean, he played 509 snaps in 19, 371 in 20, 380 in 21, and then 1,054 snaps last year.
Good gracious.
He's played a lot of snaps. But he also is a guy that has, I mean, at this point, you kind of know what you're getting. He struggled against certain things, and after 2,000 snaps in college, the odds that he gets a whole lot better against those things in year 5 are pretty limited. So what you have in him is a guy he's sort of a fire hydrant, tough to move when you're going straight at him. 6'3" and change, 315, and he's got some nasty to him. He arrives angry when he pulls. He's a guy that can drive as a run blocker from that left guard spot. He can anchor against bigger players who just want to power rush him and all that. The problem is that there's no reason to power rush him because he's consistently struggled against quickness. And that's been the issue. So he's fairly heavy footed. And when a guy gives him, a step in one direction and then takes off across his face, if that guy's quick, he's probably going to win across his face. You look at some balance issues in the past. He struggled, especially in 21. He struggled a good bit against push pulls, which is where the defensive lineman kind of gives you pressure against the chest to get you kind of to set your anchor, and then pulls you back toward himself and for a swim or a knife move. You got to think about some of the things that you do as, middle schoolers when you're screwing around with people where, you pull, and then all of a sudden you just like let the person go, or different things just to watch them fall and laugh, that sort of thing. Middle school stuff. That's one of those things that good defensive linemen do, is that, they vary their pressure, push hard, and then pull on the jersey of that offensive player, get him lunged forward or get him off balance, and then all of a sudden you got to win. He's a guy that is pretty vulnerable to that and has shown that for multiple seasons. And I thought last year he struggled more in that 1,000+ reps than he had in prior years. And, you look at 21, I thought he was a better player than in 22. I wonder whether or not he got nicked up a little bit in 22. But he's a guy that, again, has to handle quickness better, has to be able to improve his footwork a little bit to stay in balance a little bit better. And if he does that, then you're looking again at above average for the ACC, a ton of experience, and can be a good player. I mean, he was a guy that could be pretty reliable in the past. Now it's just a matter of, can he clean up those last few things? Can this new coaching situation help him get over the hump for those last few things? And if so, then you're looking at an above replacement level, above average starter for the ACC. As of right now, I'd have him graded as an average to slightly below average ACC starter at left guard based on last year. Which is the most recent body of work we've got. But I think the potential is there to be, again, an above average ACC left guard. He's gonna have to clean up a few things.
That is Ed Montelis. We're working our way through the North Carolina offensive line. Mac Brown says he wants to play 6 to 8 guys. Well, we've got 9, I believe, if my math is correct on this list. And we've got 3 left here with Jason Staples. William Barnes. This is a guy highly rated out of high school, top-level recruit. He's another one of those guys that has struggled to put it completely together, Jason. What have you seen from Barnes?
Yeah, Barnes is a guy that through his first few years, just battled injury after injury, little nagging things that just kept him off the field and was not really able to develop like they'd hoped. And you look at the snap count and you can see that 114 as a freshman in 18, 47 snaps in 19, 55 in 20, 228 in 21. And then finally last year, in year 5, got 918 snaps. And now we've got the COVID year where he's got a chance to replicate that. And, he's bounced around the offensive line. I mean, he was at right tackle. He was at right guard last year in virtually all the reps that he took last year. And now he's moved out to left tackle, at least as the current roster or as the current depth chart has him. They put him out at left tackle, and we'll see how that transition goes. But he is a guy that has a lot of position versatility, and is one of the reasons he was ranked so highly coming out of high school is because the physical tools are pretty dang good. And he's a guy that 325 I think is probably pretty accurate, and is super powerful. He gets his hands on you and he can move you, especially in the running game. At that right guard spot, he could bend and drive, get that back flat, and just, he's a guy that you want to run behind and goal line. And good length. He's, a solid 6'4", has a little longer arms than normal for that particular height. So again, good length. And he is a guy that you don't worry about his nasty streak. He will stomp on you if he gets the chance. You like that about him. My concern coming into this year is in what I've seen of him to date, he's been significantly better at guard than at tackle. And if he's the left tackle, he's going to have to play better, especially as a pass protector, than he has in prior years when he's been at tackle. I would feel much better about this offensive line as a whole if he was starting at guard and they had someone that I felt had a better track record at tackle, at that left tackle spot. That doesn't mean he can't play that position. I mean, I thought he actually looked pretty good there in the spring game, but that's the spring game. It's just hard to tell. It's not like Carolina was a pass rushing phenomenon last year, in terms of their defense. So is him having some success at left tackle in practice right now a factor of him really making the strides, getting healthy, and finally developing into the tackle prospect that everybody thought he would be 6 years ago? Or is it a matter of, he's been playing against Carolina's edge rushers? We'll find out. Now, the thing is,
the rub.
Yeah, the thing is, if you get a Trevion, Green or a Diego Pounds who suddenly just jumps up and demands to play at that left tackle spot, then all of a sudden you slide Barnes inside, and you've got, I think, a well above average ACC guard. If not, I think I think he could be an above average ACC left tackle. It's just a little bit of a wait and see for me because the bigger issues for him have been more uh, about some of the technique stuff on the at that position in the past, where I felt like he didn't get quite enough depth on his kick set. There were times where he would turn his shoulders and give up what's called a soft shoulder too quickly in pass pro, which what that means is once you turn your shoulders, that inside shoulder is your soft shoulder because your balance is not right to be able to protect it very well. So if a guy then crosses your face to take that inside, it's going to be a little easier for you than if you stay square. Too many times he would turn and then give that up. And then the other thing is if you turn, you actually make it so that there's a shorter path around you in pass protection if the guy continues to go wide. So, you'd like to see him stay square a little bit longer. And again, another guy that against quickness has had some issues in the past. So, he again the traits are there for him to be a quality player there. He's just got some things to clean up in terms of getting that stuff fixed to be able to handle that quickness. I don't think it's a physical problem for him to be able to handle quickness. But I'd like to see him move his feet just a little better and get a little bit deeper sets against really quick guys so that he can use that size to force them to try to bull him. And he's not a guy that's going to be bulled very easily. So sort of a wait and see for him at left tackle, but still a good player and a guy that you want on your roster. And if the move works, I think it solidifies the offensive line as a whole for Carolina.
Left tackle, a pretty important position when you've got Drake May as your quarterback. Two left, and I'm going to jump out of order again, Jason, because I want to save the last one for probably another guy that was so much talked about last year. But center Corey Gaynor will be who we go to now. Gaynor, of course, played a ton for Miami. He transferred up to North Carolina, Drake May's right-hand man last season, and will be this season. Corey Gaynor, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, hey, lots of people go to college for 7 years, right?
Hey, if you can do it and it's paid for, do it. 100%.
But what you're getting is a seventh-year player who's played well over 2,000 snaps in the ACC.
A lot of football.
That's a lot of football. And he's done it with pretty good success. Last year, he was right around the average for ACC centers. Not a liability, not a guy that you hang your hat on, but pretty average. And, average isn't bad when when you're on the offensive line, as long as you're not getting your butt kicked, especially at center. And what he gives you is a guy that doesn't just get pushed around at the center spot. He gives you a guy that manages the offensive front well. He's played 7 years. This is his 7th year. He's going to make sure he's seen everything when it comes to fronts, when it comes to disguise, when it comes to whatever. And he's a guy that can make sure that everybody around him has the proper call that, that fronts that, identifying what they need to do. The leadership aspect there is huge. And, the other thing is, again, he's over 300 pounds and can anchor really well. He's a guy that does not get put on skates very often. He may only be a stalemate. He may not move, that 315-pound nose tackle who's right over him, but he's also not 4 yards in the backfield very often. And that's, if you can get that at center, if you can just get a guy who stalemates at center is a really hard position. Mm-hmm. And if you can get a guy that's just going to stalemate against some of those really tough defensive tackles in the ACC, then you'll take that. You'll start with that. And that's basically where he is. The weaknesses for him, again, has to do with getting out quicked. He's not he's had some injuries in the past. He's not the quickest guy in the world. And there's not a ton of lateral quickness there at this stage of his career to where he can he's going to beat, say, a pretty quick nose tackle to the spot on, some sort of reach block or whatever. He's going to need some help on some of that, but that's virtually every center in the ACC. There are very few guys that can actually do that. So, when you're talking about that as a weakness, it's like, well, yeah, him and 9 other guys at that spot in the ACC, or 10 other guys. So, and I do think he's a better pass blocker than run blocker as a whole. I thought he was actually very good. I thought he was well above average as a pass blocker last year. And again, that's because he doesn't get pushed back into the lap of his quarterback. He handles the bull rush really well, and he does a good job of mirroring and understanding where the pressure is coming from on twists and all of that, and picking all that up. And again, that's something where with Drake May, him being back is a very nice security blanket for Drake May, because you can handle outside pressure if you're a quarterback, because that takes a little bit longer to get there. You can kind of slide in the pocket and all that. The thing you just can't, no quarterback can handle is getting pressure in his lap. That will shut a quarterback down quicker than anything else, is getting pressure straight up the middle in his lap. And I think Gainer does a good job of ensuring that that doesn't happen. And I think as a run blocker, he's pretty average. As a pass blocker, I think he's well above average. And I think overall, the package of all of that, plus the leadership and everything, gives you a quality player coming into this year.
Yeah, I don't think you can overstate the leadership aspect of it. And like you said, he has seen literally everything in college football. We always talk about, wow, how has the world changed since we were born or whatever. How much has college football changed since Corey Gaynor was a freshman at Miami? Last but not least, Spencer Rolland. This is a guy that if I had to pinpoint one offensive lineman that gets hammered the most in the social media, on the message boards, not just Inside Carolina but elsewhere, it would be Spencer. Transferred from the Ivy League, Jason. He had a learning curve, I believe, last year, going from Ivy League to Power 5 North Carolina football. His progression, and what do you see from him and expect from him this year?
Well, he was Carolina's best offensive lineman last year, other than Asim Richards, who moved on and got drafted. And I think with reasonable improvement, with reasonable advancement this year, he's a guy that can and should wind up being an NFL draft pick himself. Maybe a late round type guy, but 6'6" and good length, 315, and moves like a tight end, moves really fluidly. He's not the strongest guy in the world. So he's the one guy who, if you look at the offensive line, one of the refrains that I've had so far, I mean, if everybody's been keeping score at home, how many times have I said, well, he struggles a little bit more against quickness? Well, Rolland is the guy that he doesn't struggle as much against quickness. He moves really well. His feet are fluid, and he can mirror and do all of those things pretty well. And he's a good screen blocker, gets out and gets to the second level, can match up with some of those guys' quickness a little bit better. And I think he's got some nasty to him. I don't think there's any question about that. He's one of those guys who, guy goes down on the field in front of him, and he's gonna jump down on top of him to try to make sure that guy doesn't get up, and just make sure he drops that 300 pounds on him for a second. And he's added some weight. You could see that in the spring. I think he's legitimately up above about 310 now. And I thought he played a little light last year. I think that extra weight is going to help him a lot. There were times last year where he got pushed around. And again, that's part of that adjustment from the Ivy League to the ACC. But he had some trouble against some of the, giving up some ground against the bull rush. And just in general, last year needed to clean up a little bit of the leakage that he gave up. So you'd see a guy who would get just a little bit of advantageous leverage, and Rolland wouldn't get beat badly, but it'd be just a little too much pressure from that spot, that sort of thing. Or in the running game, like, he's not whipped, but he's not like, it's not great either. It's not in an ideal spot. I think he's pretty close to where he should be at this point, developing. And I think also the other thing last year, I thought his pass set was a little flat at times. He could get a little more depth a few times against quicker rushers. There were times where he was a little flat and then had to depend on his athleticism to be able to handle the guy who was quicker than he thought he was in the pass rush. It's like, oh shoot. And in most cases, he was quick enough to kind of get his hands on him and work with it. but you'd like him to be working from a little better leverage than he was at times last year. But like I said, the athleticism is there. I wouldn't be surprised if at 300 plus pounds he ran sub 5 in the 40. He's one of those guys who athletically is he's a good athlete. And I think he comes into this season, I project him in the same range that I did Asim Richards going into last year, which again, Richards was a guy that was a late round pick. And I think Rolland is the guy that is probably overall the best player, currently the best player on the Carolina offensive line.
Indeed, Spencer Rolland there, transfer from Harvard. He is in his, I guess, 5th year. Either way, bottom line, ton of experience on this offensive line, ton of bodies available on this offensive line. Jason, third offensive line coach in 3 years, Stacy Searles, Jack Bicknell Jr., and now Randy Clements. Overall assessment for this position group, it's an important one for North Carolina. It's an important one for Chip Lindsey and the North Carolina offense. How do you see it all playing out?
Well, I think this is the one area on the offense where there's some real questions to answer. When you look around at the rest of the offense, I think at wide receiver, things are really good. At quarterback, you feel pretty good about the quarterback position. The running back room has its questions, but you've got enough bodies there that have really good talent that you feel good. Tight ends are among the best. It's one of the best rooms in the ACC. And then you get to this room and you go, you got 4 returning starters, but none of them set the world on fire last year. And the best one, Rolland, I mean, you look at Rolland's Pro Football Focus grades last year, and he was a 66. And he, of the guys that are returning, that's I believe the top grade. Well, I mean, that's not great. You got some work to do there. But you do have one of the most veteran groups in the ACC, and you have a lot of size, and you got a lot of pieces that you feel like you can get something out of. It's just a matter of, can they find the 5 guys that are going to play the best together and put them in the right positions so that nobody is ultimately a significant weak spot. And I think they should be able to do that, but this is the one group where you look at and you go, as long as they're above average on the offensive line, they can be a borderline elite offensive group this year, borderline elite offense this year. But they're going to have some work to do to be above average, and that's the thing. So the experience makes you feel good about it. You kind of know what you're getting from most of the guys because you saw it last year. But would you say, I mean, just spitballing it on your end, would you say that Carolina's offensive line was above average last year?
I would not.
Yeah, I would say
especially
it was right.
Not in short yardage.
Yeah, I would say it was right around average, and in short yardage they struggled. So, and they still had a really good offense with that, but they want to be better than that this year. And to do that, they're going to have to get better on the offensive line. And that's going to mean getting better performance from guys who played multiple years and have not really given you a better performance so far. So that's a lot for Randy Clements to try to come in and produce. But I think, again, I don't think you're going to look at the offensive line this year. The floor for the group is pretty high. I think you're looking at, average to slightly below average as the floor. Okay, well, that's not disastrous. That's not, 2018 Florida State. That's not that. Not this is. I don't expect this offensive line to be one of those offensive lines that, you have all the pieces everywhere else, and you just can't run an offense because you can't block anybody. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The question is, what's the ceiling? And I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get it to where, okay, look, we can do better than average. And can they put those pieces together to get better than average is the question.
Jason Staples dropping knowledge on UNC football scouting reports, the offensive line. When you're listening to this, make sure you're checking out Tar Pit Premium message boards. The running backs are in full swing when this one drops on YouTube and on the podcast channel. We, of course, will be back to talk running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, and that quarterback position. Jason says that North Carolina seems pretty good at this year. For Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com, I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Jason Staples. We'll be back. Stay tuned for a lot more content at Inside Carolina.